There are thousands of privately held unicorns, but are they doing well?
Zombies are companies that still operate, but they're practically dead. There's no way that it could achieve a successful exit.
That's Roee. He just completed his tenure at Winning by Design, where he worked with several pre-IPO companies on their go-to-market. And with him, we're talking about the concept of zombie unicorns.
A zombie unicorn is a company that we all admire and we all have heard of. However, they're not telling us the truth that they are already zombies.
Before we jump into the show, today's episode is brought to you by Everstage, the top-rated sales commissions platform on G2, Gartner Peer Insights, and Trustradius, with more than 2,000 reviews from customers like Diligent, Wiley, Trimble, and more. Visit everstage.com and mention Revenue Formula to unlock a personalized sales compensation strategy session with one of Everstage's RevOps experts. And now, enjoy the show.
So,
Putting you on the spot.
As of late. So I have the perfect intro today. As you know, my son, he goes to school. It's his first year. They have a library at the school. And every Monday, he borrows books, brings them home. We'll read them for bedtime stories. This time, guess which book he brought home?
The Revenue Architecture.
Oh, that would have been awesome. That would have been a perfect intro. No, he brought back a book on, I think it's called Fable Animals. Is that English term?
Yeah.
And we read, no joke, we read about unicorns yesterday. Apparently, They hide in the forest because people want to kill it to take its horn, which is apparently magical as well. So I just found that was the perfect intro segue to today because we have Roee with us today. Thanks so much for joining. You've recently published a paper. What's the title of that paper, Roee?
Oh, you guys need to help me out there.
You could just make up something unicorn something, you know?
Paradox.
Yeah. Zombie unicorns, that's the title.
Zombie unicorns.
There you go.
Yeah.
I feel like for my son, at least, that's the perfect combination of fable animals. Like zombies, awesome. They're scary,
He's going to
creepy.
listen to this episode.
And then a unicorn, it's like, come on. What's not to like there? What's not to like? So what is a zombie unicorn, Roee?
A zombie unicorn is a company that we all admire and we all have heard of. However, they're not telling us the truth that they are already zombies. And zombie company is a general term. It's not something that I created. I just combined zombies and unicorns together. So we all know what unicorns are, right? Companies that have a valuation north of $1 billion. And zombies are companies that still operate, but they're practically dead. There's no way that it could achieve a successful exit. And when you combine them, that's the new term that I'm trying to coin, but there are very successful companies. We all heard of them. We all admire them. But honestly, we don't know them. They probably do, not in all cases, but they cannot succeed.
Yeah. So
I was going to say for some reason they won't die because that's the zombie thing. No, anyway.
But they're already dead, I guess. But so I think we previously kind of called them the Walking Dead or something like this, but kind of going in the same direction basically. So before we jump into kind of the really interesting stuff, how did they get there, right? Because no one is setting out, hey, let's build a zombie unicorn and we have achieved it. It's like, they did something well. Let's just be clear about that, right? Not everyone even gets to the unicorn status. And I think for our listeners, maybe we have a couple of folks that operate in unicorn companies, but then we have a bunch that maybe, don't, that are below that threshold, that might have seen some similar patterns actually, and those patterns might also affect them, right? I think zombie smaller than unicorn company is less catchy title, but it kind of the same physics probably apply, right? Yeah. So jumping into this, how did these companies get there?
They grew in a different age of our industry. Mm-hmm. Right, we all know that. The SaaS market came crashing down December 2021. I think the point is DocuSign shares fell by 40% in a matter of 3 days. This is considered like the first signal that we all witnessed, but we all saw what happened after that. So most of these companies, if not all of them, grew in a different age. And things were different. The numbers were different. And mostly the valuations were different.
Yeah.
And we all know that valuation was skyrocketing. You just needed to show, basically valuations was done mostly on one thing, which is the growth rate.
Yeah.
If you had a high growth rate, 2-3 years, then your valuation would skyrocket.
Yeah. And kind of translating this into high valuation always is like, okay, cool, high valuations. But high valuations really also means high expectations, right? Kind of those two things kind of go hand to hand. So if you are in a hype market, if you are in a market of like, infinite capital basically, and then you get this massive label put on you, which, might be unicorn or less or more than that, right? Kind of a couple of the examples in your paper are like, 9x unicorns and stuff like that. Like, what does that do to a company? What does it do to a leadership? And how do you make decisions once you have those crazy valuations that you are, frankly, you're expected to catch up to eventually, right? Kind of, how does that change an organization?
Yeah. So first of all, there's a fantastic, so you guys know Silicon Valley, the TV show, right? Mm-hmm. There's a fantastic scene that I like to use, and if we can, we'll share it in the podcast notes.
Yeah.
There's one of the founders and the guy there, the main character, him in a bar, and you see him like, why nobody told me I can say no to the money?
Yeah.
In the good old days, founders, higher valuations meant you're going to get more money. And 9 out of 10 founders, entrepreneurs, were not in a position to say no to that money. And with, as you said, with higher valuations comes higher expectations. So we're giving you so much money. We expect you to reach that point, these goals, and these are the milestones that we're setting up for you. And it's usually around growth, all about growth. So we've got a lot of money in the bank, spend it, hire more people, go to events, create pipeline, all that, just focused on that. And people were spending like crazy. Companies were spending like crazy. And then you saw the cost of acquisition skyrocketing. And when money is no longer cheap and you're wasting so much money, and in a lot of cases, as we saw from 2022 onwards, the growth has dropped dramatically because people stopped buying. SaaS companies stopped buying from other SaaS companies. Yeah, it's the goals and milestones are no longer achievable for a lot of companies.
But, so the thing is that I always kind of think back at is like, would you say that everyone was just an idiot, or would you say like, well, to a degree, in this system of free money, valuations going up, very competitive market, growth is kind of happening. People then defaulted like, okay, the only thing to keep the valuation alive is more growth. So the only thing we need to do is grow. So let's spend all the money on growth. This is where this growth at all costs came from. Mm-hmm. Like looking back, we obviously like, all of us were idiots. But the thing is, from how the system was back then, would you actually say that everyone just made a massive mistake, or was everyone kind of self-optimizing in the right way, but the system kind of brought us to the brink? Kind of, if you now with perfect 2020 hindsight, look at this thing, do you think we were all idiots?
I'm not in a position to say that we were all idiots, but there was a problem with the system, and again, coming back to the title, I'm talking about the paradox here. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this: who do you think defines how companies grow, how companies operate, how companies are evaluated in our industry?
I mean, I think there's probably kind of some of these things are more operational pieces, but I would say obviously it has to do with the investors, it has to do with the board, it has to do with the CEO, CFO, right?
That's right. Let's talk about investors and in some cases CEOs and CFOs. What's the investors, mostly VCs, business model? Their business model is, I'm taking somebody else's money, I'm giving it to companies. Again, 80% of them will probably fail, but there's the 20% that will rock stars, right? The Ubers and those type of companies. That's their business model. And in order to mitigate that risk, they want to invest and get their money back as fast as possible. That is not, in my view, that is not aligned with how companies should grow. In a lot of cases, there are companies and Deal and Wix, and there are a few other companies right now that are blitzscaling, right? They're growing crazy year over year, quarter over quarter. Most companies out there cannot achieve that growth rate. But does that mean that they don't have a right to exist? Of course they do. So the business model of the VCs, grow as fast as possible. I'm giving you money. I'm expecting you to grow as fast as possible for you to achieve an exit and for me to give back the money to my investors.
Yeah.
Companies in a lot of situations, maybe grow at all costs, grow as fast as possible is not the right thing. And that's the paradox that I'm talking about. The business models are not aligned.
Yeah. Yes. And basically kind of it also speaks into the, it's aligned for some very few organizations. Like some companies can grow like this. Some companies are these rock stars in the portfolio that every VC brags at the dinner party, right? But for most other companies, that's just not the case. And then it becomes this, become a unicorn or die trying kind of thing, right? That's the business model that is being implemented then from the board and so forth, right? And I think I just recently reread the paper a little bit, that then obviously has led to lots of top-down pressure from the board to say like, hey, you gotta execute this plan that we funded because that's what my business model looks like. Then they hire a bunch of people, spend a bunch of cash, maybe grow, maybe don't grow, but still have like a large cost basis, right? Which basically, I haven't seen it said like this before, but it is crystal clear to me now. That situation basically created a lot of fragility in those organizations for what could come, right? For what could happen. Then enter what the DocuSign crash. When was it in 21, 22?
December 21, yeah.
Yeah. And what happened then to those organizations, right? Suddenly, what happened there that created this stumbling in the industry from your perspective?
To the companies that already showed signs of failure, because the zombie unicorns, it's not apparent, it's not clear that they're failing right now. So DocuSign, we know that they're struggling. It's clear. They're a public company. We see their reports. They are struggling. The rest of the companies, we just don't know. They're running out of cash. They're not growing as fast as possible. Fundraising is practically, it's very hard unless you say AI, right? That's the cyber and AI. That's the only industries or technologies that are being funded. Yeah, so that's basically it. And again, it reminds me of, there's a joke in 2015, like Jeff Bezos, when he was still running Amazon, he still is, but, or at least had the title of running Amazon. There's a joke out there that every quarter the CFO entered Jeff Bezos' office and told him, hey, listen, we're very close to becoming profitable. Next quarter, if we continue like that, we will be profitable. And every quarter, Jeff Bezos yelled at him, get out of my office. I need you to find where to invest that money. I don't want to become profitable. We need to spend in order to grow. Yeah. Right. So that's the mindset of that grow at all costs.
Yes. I think Bezos and Amazon did it slightly differently, right? Basically, they were always almost on this break-even point. Basically, they were less reliant on other people's money.
That's right.
But I think this is the big difference, right? To those other companies that maybe were successful, were growing, they were relying on outside cash coming in, and suddenly that rug was pulled from under their feet, and that created a couple of things. I'm gonna touch on a few, and maybe we jam on this a little bit, but. Number one, they realized, hey, we can't spend so much more money on growth. And then, with that, and a couple of other things, like the whole industry not growing, basically, your whole customer, your whole ICP not growing, spending money, basically. And suddenly across the board, growth plummeted across, right? And that obviously then has a follow-on knock-on effect on you being able to get funding afterwards, right? Yeah. And kind of is that basically the typical setup of this, of this zombie unicorn where, basically some growth was happening, was great. They were relying outside cash is gone, growth is gone. And now where do you go, right? Is that the setup from your perspective?
It is, but there's a bigger problem that talks about financials. I'll give you an example. There's a company, I won't mention the name, but they do travel SaaS solution for business travel. So basically they want to become your booking / Expedia / everything all bundled up to serve enterprises.
Yes. I think we have an idea who that is, but anyway.
Yeah. At the peak, they were valued at 12 billion.
Yeah.
And it's a private company. The ARR is not disclosed, but we're assuming it's between 300 to 500 ARR.
Yeah.
So they disclosed their ARR in the last funding, which was 8 billion, and now it's 12 million. So it's like, 400, 500 million ARR. Now, this was their valuation. That valuation is what? 24x? Right?
Yeah.
500 million multiplied by 24x, right? Facebook, Meta, Google, they're at 6x, 7x. Can they continue to grow to justify that high valuations? They can't. Of course they can't. So the real valuation is probably around, giving today's numbers, 3 billion, 4 billion.
Yeah.
But Andreessen Horowitz and other very successful investors invested at valuations 12 billion. What does that mean in terms of how much they need to cross in their books, Andreessen Horowitz? Like their asset, they thought they last invested at 12 billion, and really it's 3 billion, 4 billion right now.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
No, but also Andreessen, they don't want to get 12 billion out. They want to get like 20 billion out, right? Because they invested at 12 billion, right? It's like, it's not only that you need to get to 12, you actually need to kind of exceed this whole thing. So I think, Mikkel, you had some technical issues in between. Just, you jump in.
So I was just going to say, like, do you think this is still going on? Because then what goes on in my head is like Clay recently announced, what was their valuation? 2.5, 3.5 billion on, and I think, I don't know if it was publicly also mentioned, but I think someone said their ARR is around 20, 30 million, I want to say, or something like this. So the multiple on that is just bonkers. Like, what do you think about that? Are we back to stupid, or what's going on here?
I don't think we're back to stupid because we don't see that often. But I think the example that you gave is spot on. This is like, and I forgot that the CEO's name, the founder's name, but like, hey, dude, you could have said no to the money. Like, with that 2 billion valuation, the expectations from you is to grow, and they're growing fantastic. They're doing a great job. Like, we all are seeing their marketing campaigns, but still.
There's a rumor, and you heard it here first. There's a rumor that this was primarily a money dispensed to the founders. Actually, it was not money going to the organization. It was money directly into. And it's fine, and I would say yes to that. I would say yes to that. But obviously, kind of that completely misaligns kind of what the founders want, what the business wants, what the investor wants. That kind of fuels this whole thing even further.
And exactly that. And there's where the paradox is even greater. So you mentioned the investors earlier, like we've got the investors business model and we've got maybe what's good for the company. And we tend to think that the founders are always looking for the best interest of the company.
Yeah.
But as you said, no, it's not. Sometimes the founders and the investors are on the same side. Let's increase the valuation that we can do secondary and we can get rich even before the exit, while what's good for the company / the customers is only second.
Yeah.
I think what I found staggering is, I think something like a number of 1,500, 1,600 businesses that were trying to go public. So I'm not sure if all of them would be classified as zombie unicorns, but we're talking like a bunch. We're talking like a lot of companies, right? Yeah. And people listening, I mean, those are companies probably like your SalesLoft, your Outreach, your Gong, and I just named kind of that category, right? Kind of, and then there are like 1,500 more, which is crazy, right? And I would say though, we're not seeing, to your point, we're not seeing unicorn valuations being announced every day anymore. Kind of that was a thing from 2021. We now see something with Clay, and maybe we see something, there's
but
some
you know why
there's a couple of others. No, tell us.
Because everybody's downsizing. Sorry, down rounds.
Yeah.
It's happening left and right. And you don't talk about down rounds, right?
Yeah, well, that's
so from 12 billion, you're doing a down round at what, 6 billion or something? You don't tell everybody.
No.
You just take the money, and continue. But what's that? Those 1,500, by the way, that's a number from Deal Room from 2021. The number of unicorns.
Yeah.
How many of those 1,500 IPOs or exited in the past 2?
I don't know, 2 handfuls,
years?
1 handful or something like this?
Yeah,
I mean,
like
it was very
IPO'd,
few.
like less than 10 exits. And so there were Salesforce bought a few.
Yeah,
and
that's true. Yeah.
All right, maybe 20, 30, 50. We still have 1,450 companies that used to be at unicorn status that want to do some sort of exit, right? You can't stay public, although private companies, although OpenAI and SpaceX prove to us that there's another model.
Yeah.
But not all of the companies are OpenAI. What's going to happen with all those 1,450 unicorns?
What is going to happen to them, Roee? Enlighten us.
I started to do the math and it never works out. What? We can, assuming IPOs will come back, we can do 50, 60 SaaS IPOs a year. More than that, like the public investors cannot absorb, like they won't invest. So that's 50, 60. Google's Salesforce, the big tech will buy what? Each company will buy.
But
5?
even on that, like these guys weren't that acquisitive in the last couple of years, right? They didn't buy much actually. Kind of there was.
But that was because regulations. Lena Khan and the SEC did not allow these companies. They objected companies doing M&As. Now with the new.
That might change now.
It is already changing.
Yeah.
We see that. So
okay.
That's going to happen. The big tech will buy again. A few tens, 100. SAP is going to join the party, 150.
Yeah.
Still, what's going to happen with the rest? They cannot raise any capital. They're just going to be bought cents on the dollars. It's like,
but kind of those guys, and let's kind of talk an outreach. So Manny Medina was on the show. He's a great guy. I think he built a great company. But for example, these guys, they might be a great example to be picked up by someone. I could see that. Yeah. But also, I mean, by now they must be profitable, right? You can't you can't keep running this thing, for example, and still shed lots of millions of dollars every year. Do you think that many of those 1,500 companies by now basically are at break even or a little bit profitable, so they don't need to rely on outside funding? Or are there still rounds going on that because they're down rounds, we just don't see that stuff, and they still basically require capital to rush into those companies?
Again, this is like a gut feeling. At least half are still burning cash like crazy.
Okay.
Because moving from a grow at all cost mindset to let's get to that break-even point is really hard to do.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that there are successful companies that were able to downsize and maintain their cost at the good enough point. But still, Tony, these companies somebody needs to give the investors their money back. That's their business model. I gave you, even out, whatever, I gave this company 5 years ago, $50 million, $20 million. I need to give my investors the money back. How is that? Who's going to buy that for me?
So I think this is just not going to happen. I think that is just, I think in my head, I'm separating, there is what's the future for shareholders? And I think that's messed up in many cases. Let's just be honest about it. Especially the ones that came in super late,
Yeah.
right? Let's not forget, just because this travel company, it's Navan. I think it's in your thing. Kind of,
Yeah.
I think this is public knowledge. Just because Andreessen valued them at 12 billion in the last round, doesn't mean that all the investors that came in at pre-seed, seed, series A, B, D, and whatever, not going to make money, right? They will still make money, right? Let's not forget about that, right? So there's a certain tranche of the investors that are going to get completely effed, and just forget about it. This money is gone. It's over. If they have controlling power on the board and kind of block exits, which they're kind of doing sometimes, that's obviously a shitty kind of situation. But then also, let's not forget, I mean, you can say about, for example, Outreach, and it's just the company we're using as an example. You can say what you will about them and SDRs and AI SDRs, but it's a solid company. I mean, it's a good company. They have lots of customers. Customers are happy. They're kind of, recurring value, recurring revenue, all of that good stuff. It's a good company. And eventually, that good company will either continue to generate profits or dividends or cash or something like this. I'm not sure when it will get there, if that's the case, or it will be picked up by someone for a reasonable price, like not the sky high whatever they were kind of valued at, but for like a reasonable, hey, 3, 4, 5, 6 X kind of multiple. And a lot of people will still see a lot of gain from that, just not the last folks, right? So I think there's a middle ground, and I think what's going to happen is that all of these companies, if they do survive, and we're seeing the first ones stumbling, by the way, if they do survive, I think they will just become what we used to call a normal business. It will just be a good business, hopefully making cash and having a good customer base and so forth, right? And that in itself also is value. I think it's just not this hype value. So I don't know. This is how I think it will get resolved. Actually, kind of the last investors are effed, but everyone else kind of let's see what they can do with this asset.
So what about all these wonderful folks on the team, all the revenue leaders? What are the consequences for them? What are they to do? How can they basically help get these companies out of this, I guess, limbo they're stuck in?
Yeah. So I think what we all saw is that people downsized their teams. That was the first urgent thing to do. But now they're still expected to continue to have, let's say, a decent growth, but to keep the cost low.
Yeah.
And this is where you need to push for efficiency and productivity.
And
with your teams.
What camp are you at? Are you the hey, AI will do all of that camp, or is it the boring process optimization? Like what is it? Is it give me the one cure and fix it all? I just need to kind of one piece of medicine and I'm done, or do I actually need to do the hard work, Roee? What's your perspective?
Can I choose the middle ground?
Sure, yeah.
I'm there. I think there will be tremendous efficiency and productivity gains using AI, but I do think it's going to be slower than some people, even within my circles that talk about that. So, a bit slower than people predict, and in specific areas. So outreach, I believe that AI can do a decent job. Outreach is mostly outbound, but it also inbound, so they can replace inbound. And outbound, they could help speed up the process and take the manual research part, which there's a lot that it can do. So AI we'll see a lot of efficiency and productivity gains with AI. But let's hold on. We're still not there.
Do you think we're seeing, like, on the tail end of all these zombie unicorns, think we're seeing a new breed of companies? I saw a list of teams. The list included folks like Cursor and Lovable reaching, I think, 50 to 100 million with a team of 20. And it just made me keep going back to the Instagram example, which was exited, I think, at $1 billion. There were 10 people. Do you think this is kind of almost the counter movement happening right now? Or are those like very unique edge cases potentially making this really difficult for us to navigate?
I think these are edge cases. Like, fantastic. This is where we all want to be, right? But the entire system, our entire industry is based on humans. We all know how to sell in a certain way. We buy in a certain way. It will take time for us to move into selling enterprise grade solutions using a PLG motion, kind of, which is the holy grail, right? Can we sell to enterprises without humans or with minimal human touches?
I also think there's just such a perfect storm for those companies happening that just make this, that fuel this growth, right? It's kind of easy to understand value. Like, I don't need to code. I can build an app now by myself. Okay, I get that value. What's the rollout implementation? Oh, you just load up this website, you put this thing in and it's there. It's like, okay, no problem here. And then people are getting excited about it. And then, you kind of get this whole wheel running. And I think if you're able to find a product that kind of has those features, like insane, that's awesome. But I think it's, and VCs will set the bar there, right? And we kind of saw some folks now kind of basically saying this, like, hey, this triple double thing that we used to say, it's really not this anymore. We're kind of more like quintuple, quadruple, triple, double, It's like that should, and I think using those examples as your guiding light, I think you'll jump off a roof very, very quickly because it's so impossible to get there.
Yeah. And it's mostly is based on good product execution or development, and less which is in with our focus, which is GTM and selling and methodologies and all those stuff. So a great product eats processes and sales and GTM every day.
Oh, so actually, everyone who's listening, you guys are not that important, actually. No, but it's like I think you're right. But at the end of the day, I think there's only so much space for crazy products hitting kind of the spot exactly right versus just kind of executing this really well, right? And I think this is also where, and I think by now it's known, right? Kind of you've kind of moved on from winning by design, was very process focused over there. Now, maybe you kind of very quickly kind of just mention where you are now kind of and how you want to help companies going forward.
Yeah, I discovered, so in Winning by Design, we talk about processes, peoples, and tools. This is how we increase growth. Lately, I've started to talk to Ulrich. Ulrich is leading Willingness to Pay. He wrote a fantastic book on pricing and packaging. And we started to have conversations. And I discovered that there's another way. And basically, I would say, in a lot of cases, easier and quicker to increase revenue. And that is with the right pricing and packaging.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm currently doing. I'm focusing and adding that tool, or maybe starting off with, let's first get the right pricing and packaging. And then we can talk about all the rest. It's like getting closer to what our product actually does. Like, again, product eats GTM any day. So I think somewhere in the middle, there's that pricing and packaging. If we get this right, we'll be able to unlock a lot of potential. And then we can talk about, okay, let's continue to improve our sales motions and introducing processes, etc. Everything else that I was preaching for the last 5 years, but now I want to focus on getting the pricing and packaging right first.
Yeah, I think there's lots of value to unlock. I think a lot of people are very afraid of doing any pricing changes, myself included, by the way. but ultimately, right? I think getting unstuck from this Walking Dead zombie unicorn perspective. I think, and I would love to have your perspective on this and your take on this, but there are a couple of just really good business decisions that are required. Like, hey, you need to reduce your cost. It doesn't matter how. It doesn't matter. You have to, right? You have to not be relying on outside funding. And I think a lot of people have realized this, right? Now the hardest part is like, okay, how do we get the go-to-market motion to be, profitable and sustainable and scalable and all of that stuff. And that is a lot of process work, and then obviously kind of culminating also in some of the pricing kind of things around it. But it's like, it's the boring work that's required. That's kind of my perspective on this. How do you see it? Kind of how do these zombie unicorns get unstuck and kind of get moving, whatever the cap table says?
Yeah, so maybe let's start off with my new passion, pricing and packaging, my new old passion, pricing and packaging. I think there's a lot of potential to unlock there, even for existing customers. Getting, as you said, people don't visit their pricing and packaging as they should, and there's a lot of potential to unlock there. So let's increase the top line, and all of a sudden the gross margins, the cost margins are all of a sudden in our favor. So I think that's probably the first thing that I would currently look into. And that's outside of the processes and streamlining everything that we talked about. So probably that's the first step I would look into.
Okay. Mikkel, do you have like a closing question from your side?
Really? Do you? Kind of throwing me under the bus. You can't just throw me as like, oh, do you have a closing question out of the blue? It's like, that's not okay. That's not cool, man.
Yeah, no, it's because we're not sitting next to one another. They sort of kicked you under the table and like kind of getting you a heads up. No, Roee, I mean, I think I'd be interested just to hear from you some musings on, are we headed in that direction again? Have people learned? Are we just waiting for the news cycle to kick off in 3 or 4 or 5 years and the same thing happens again? Or what's your thinking here? Have we as operators matured or have we not?
The cycle is already happening. I don't know if we're matured, but again, say AI and you'll get funding.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Well, Roee, thank you so much for spending some time here with us.
That was my pleasure. Thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah. And everyone who's listening, if you like this, hit the subscribe button or leave some feedback if you want to. And otherwise, see you next time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.